Ouch my charade. That's funny. All right, man, let's do this. All right. 3, 2, and hey everybody. How's it going? It must be really early on a Saturday morning because it's Cafe BTW, a morning gaming coffee podcast. We were just talking about coffee. If you heard on the starting soon screen, check below. We have another guest. We have been on an awesome streak of just having amazing people coming on the show, and we have a really great show for you today, NBA Jam themed. And my friend Reyan here has joined
There's someone here.
me today. And oh, thank you so much for the sub, by the way,
Logan.
right at the top. But
That was fast.
that was fast. Thank you so much for the sub. Lost Pool Boy, thank you so much. Reyan, what's up, man? Good morning. I think it's still morning where you are. How's it going? Welcome to the show. I know that we've been working on trying to get you on for a while. It's good to have you hanging out with me today. What's going on, man?
Good morning. Good morning. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. It's it's 11 a.m. over here in Columbus, Ohio, in the burbs of Columbus, Ohio. I'm feeling good. I had a bagel with some seasoning on it.
All right.
I'm ready to rock and roll.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Obviously, our focus today, which I love, is one of my favorite. And Reyan, just to give you my age, you know, I grew up in the early '90s arcade boom, where Street Fighter II, NBA Jams, and The Simpsons arcade ruled the arcades. You know, X-Men arcade. I could go down the pipeline, but no arcade was without an NBA Jam cabinet. You know, you were not an arcade unless you had in the 90s when it was, you know, out,
Right.
NBA Jam cabinet. But before we get into that, I love when I have guests on because I want to learn a little bit more about you. First off, we'd love to learn, you know, where you're from and also some kind of connection to your childhood that really got you into video games in the first place. And again, man, thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Let's see. Yeah. A little bit about me. I was born in Dallas, Texas, which is where I'll start the gaming story too. My dad was not particularly into the idea of video games, I think, but this was right when the Nintendo was coming out or just come out. I was born in '86, and I think he got it from Tom Thumb. So he bought a console over at Tom Thumb. So like this is back when you can buy consoles at grocery stores. Different era.
Right. That is a different era.
Yeah, and he brought it home, and obviously I was a little kid, so I don't remember the first time I played it, but I definitely grew up loving Super Mario and Duck Hunt, and playing a lot of Nintendo games as a kid, and then taking like a little bit of a break, and then getting back into the Genesis later on, and so just a little bit about more to give you an idea of where I've been in life. Started out, was born in Dallas, Texas, grew up in Pakistan. Which is where I had in Karachi, Pakistan, which is where I had a Sega Mega Drive 2, the PAL equivalent of the Genesis.
So where did you go to buy video games in Pakistan? By the way, I was curious before.
Yeah. There's different kinds of electronic stores. There's more like legitimate ones, and then there's more like little booths in imagine like a permanent flea market. Like a building that's a permanent flea market. Like there's that equivalent, but then there's also like more fancier stores. But yeah, you can get. Okay. We get carts imported. When it came to CDs later on, those were all pirated. Like you could not get a real CD for the life of you when I had a PlayStation or a Dreamcast. So all those were pirated, but the real deal carts, those were actually imported. So yeah, grew up over there, and I was big into the Genesis, the PlayStation, and the Dreamcast. I always bounced around. I never had allegiance to one particular brand or one particular company. And then I've been a PS2, 3, 4 person since. Right now I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I moved back over here, or rather moved here when I was 15, with my mom, and then lived in New Mexico for a little bit. But otherwise, I've been in Ohio for the longest period. So I feel like at this point I'm like straight up Ohioan. Like I feel that enough of a connection that I can call myself an Ohioan, even though I wasn't born here.
Is that what you call you guys, Ohioans?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, that's what I've heard.
I love that. Yeah. Dude, that's great. That's great. I love the story. I always love learning about also because you're from another country. What was the culture like on even like buying video games and accessibility is always a question.
Absolutely.
When it comes to like, I live and grew up in America, and it sounds like you've definitely spent a lot of your life in America. So you know how easy it is for us to get things, right? To go and get video games, but other parts of the country. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective, and that's a really great story, man. So I guess where things kind of move in your life, the big question and obviously the big topic today is NBA Jam. First, before we get into this book you wrote, what is your love for NBA Jam? What got you into the first moment that you realized NBA Jam was one of your favorite video games? I believe if you wrote a book about this, Reyan, that you love this game, right?
Yeah.
I'm not wrong on that, right?
So it's got to be no. You're definitely not wrong about that. No. You got to write. Like if you're spending like 4 years learning about a subject, you got to at least like it. So no, but I love NBA Jam. So yeah. So going back to Pakistan and like let's say like 95 or so, maybe 96. This is when I had the Sega Mega Drive. I got a comic book from an uncle. Like this uncle, what he'd do for my birthdays, he'd buy me a whole bunch of comic books. And like a big stack of them. It was amazing. They're pretty much like remaindered comic books, so like discounted stuff, whatever stuff came in. Anyways, there was an ad on the back of a Superboy comic for NBA Jam Tournament Edition, and at this point in my life, I knew what the NBA was. Like I was probably like let's say like maybe 10 or 11 when I saw this, maybe a little bit younger. Like I knew what the NBA was, but I didn't really pay attention to it. But this ad just blew my mind. Like if you look up NBA Jam Tournament Edition print ad,
let me see.
Like you'll see it. It's the classic ad where it's like the balls in the center.
Wait, NBA Jam what?
Yeah, NBA Jam Tournament Edition print ad.
You got it. I'm gonna find this.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of this. Is it this one?
Let's see. That's the one. That's the one.
Ooh, that is a classic one. I remember this one.
It's a classic one, and I saw this on the back of a Superboy comic, and I remember seeing that, and it just blew my mind. Oh, yeah.
This is your tweet, by the way.
Right. I didn't realize it. Didn't put two and two together. Yeah. This was the one that did it for me. And like there's just something about the colors that pop. Like the Sonics logo looks so cool. The Hornets logo looks so cool. I was really into it. Now, granted, I'd never played basketball. I didn't really care for sports video games at that point, but I was like, I'm gonna give it a shot, absolutely. So I got NBA Jam Tournament Edition. That was my first NBA Jam game, and I loved it. And that actually sparked a huge love for basketball. So, I grew up in Pakistan. We're talking about accessibility. This is pre-internet. So trying to follow the NBA in a country where basketball games are not broadcast, where there's very few NBA fans around there, where the only access of information you've got is magazines, trading cards, like maybe a CNN news report where like they show like a little like bulletin at the end of like so and so won a game. It was very hard, but playing NBA Jam, I love this game. I love the excitement of it, the feel. Tim Kitzrow's voice, of course, boom shakalaka, all that. And I mean, I loved NBA Jam Tournament Edition as a kid so much that I got huge into the NBA, and I would like follow the NBA from a distance and have collect trading cards, all kinds of stuff. But my love for basketball really started with NBA Jam. And then to fast forward a little bit, so, I also love Mortal Kombat. I think that probably came before NBA Jam. And the first ever writing gig I did for any place was on a Mortal Kombat website. This is still when I was in Pakistan. This is before MK5 came out. So this would probably have been, or Deadly Alliance. That would have been probably like 99, 2000. So I worked on a Mortal Kombat website. It was my first ever writing gig. So I knew Midway. So I had a huge passion for Midway overall. Was super into Mortal Kombat, especially like the behind the scenes stuff. And then fast forward all those years later. So I'd been a writer for many years. I wrote mostly music pieces. So I do previews of bands that are coming to town or interviews with different people. I wrote for Rolling Stone, The Atlantic, Wired, Spin, all kinds of different places. Funny enough, almost no video games. Yeah. It was just so funny how it worked out like that. But I pitched a couple music books. Neither of them worked out. I was like, that's a bummer. Still really wanted to write a book. And then I heard about this publisher called Boss Fight Books, actually based out of Los Angeles. And they had an open call for pitches. And they said, you submit your proposal for writing a book about a certain game. And I was like, man, I really want to submit something because like these music books, they didn't work out, but there's got to be something I can write about. So I racked my brain and I was like, what do I really love? And I was like, oh, NBA Jam. I mean, like, you don't get to have a game that was as popular as NBA Jam and as on top of the world as NBA Jam, and then it's just basically gone in terms of new games. Like you don't have that without a really dramatic story over there. There's got to be something. So that was back in 2015. I pitched it, and then I started working on the book. And I was like, oh, it's gonna take me like a year. I'm like, oh, it's gonna take me 2 years. Okay, 3 years is the max, and then it ended up taking me 4 years. But I ended up doing 68 interviews for it. Spoke to all the developers. Tim Kisro, spoke to I spoke to DJ Jazzy Jeff and George Clinton, a couple of the secret characters. Spoke to Shaq for the book, Glenn Rice, John Romero,
Nice.
all kinds of different people. So basically, I took all those different experiences I had, loving Midway, loving the NBA, loving Mortal Kombat, even to some degree, loving arcades, and then try to put them all into one package. And then I was really amazed by how this has taken off because, like I was saying, like my music stuff was not taken off the same way. So it's pretty cool that this has been like given like new life into my career. Not like it was like on the downhill side or anything like that, but more like this like, definitely took it to a different level.
Wow. Okay. So basically you had experience as a journalist already. So that's really interesting. And so you put your effort into this. So I have the book here as we see. This is the one you sent me. Thank you so much for sending me a copy as well, Reyan. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to talk really quickly highlight a couple of chapters here. And if you could give me a little bit of depth on what chapter like encompass, like, so should I pick one maybe and you'd be able to tell me?
Absolutely. Yeah. It depends what kind of subject matter do you want to talk about? What are you most interested in?
I think let's start in the beginning with Mark Turmel. How much of Mark Turmel is in this book? Who's the creator of NBA Jam?
Mark Turmel is by far the biggest presence in the book. Definitely the lead character of the book. Fascinating person. One of those names I recognized from when I was a kid, and like, oh, he's a secret character in NBA Jam, but I didn't realize the whole like depths of stories that he had and all the things that went with it. Yeah, Mark Turmel, is somebody that I really got to know well throughout the book, throughout making the book too. Yeah, that portrait of him in NBA Showtime, that's something that's seared in my mind. I was like his glamour shot over there.
Yeah, I just found these random photos of him.
Yeah, over on Giant Bomb. Yeah. He's on chapter 3, Magic Carpet Ride. And just to give you an idea of who he is, he started out as he grew up in Michigan, and he grew up right when home computing was becoming a thing. And he ended up.
That's him right now, by the way.
Yeah, that's the man. He had access to a computer and was really interested in games. Like this is like, let's say, I think it was like this would have been the 70s. Just to take you back, this would have been the early 70s. So he was really interested in home computing, and he would program games at home for Sirius Software, which was a publisher out of California, out of Sacramento, I think, that would publish games for the Apple II. So he would code Apple II games at home, and he ended up earning like crazy amounts of money as a teenager programming these games when it was brand new, like $10,000 a month royalty checks, which is just wild to me. Like in the 70s. Like, which is where it's like, what? This is ridiculous. Like, this would be like the equivalent of like the first Twitch streamers making money of like crazy. Like, you can't make money off of that, or like the first esports players making money off of playing games competitively. But Turmel was huge fan of video games, and he loved arcade games especially. He kind of went on a few different paths in the business, and eventually he got an offer to work at Midway. Or he rather had an interview with Midway and ended up getting a job over there. And he worked on so many classics. He worked on Smash TV. That was his first game. He worked on Total Carnage, which was the follow-up to Smash TV, which was kind of a flop.
But I want to say that Smash TV was a really fantastic arcade game in its own right.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And it was really like when Mark Turmel got to Midway, he was kind of an outsider. He was kind of had a big personality for these regular dudes who were like Turmel came in with like super long hair, and he would like wear like bright suits. Like at least he wore a bright suit to the first dinner that he had, and would drive like a fancy car. And like all these things where like the game developers were like, I'm not sure about this guy. He seems like an idea guy. He's not necessarily a programmer, but he was a programmer. And Smash TV was like, that was one of his first babies. And then he did Total Carnage, which didn't do well, which was the kind of semi-sequel to Smash TV. And then he created NBA Jam. So then he oversaw the team that made NBA Jam in 1992 was when it was developed, and then it came out in 93. Otherwise, he's worked on, NFL Blitz, NBA Showtime, NBA Ballers, WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game, a whole bunch of games. Now he's at Zynga, making mobile games, using a lot of the same ideas that he did for arcade games back in the day, funny enough. But really an industry legend and one of those people that I did not know had so many amazing stories and so many cool insights until I got into the process of writing the book.
There is a good shot of him. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, in the blue screen studio.
I just lost it. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
well. He said also, I read he was very influenced by games like Robotron and like has like a really seated history in the in just video game history before he became a developer and so forth. But I think just from you listing the games this guy created, he is a legend in the industry, is one of those like important figures in gaming, because NBA Jam is still considered such a fantastic game. I swear everyone that was playing video games in the 90s, this game touched them, in America at least, touched them in some form or fashion, right? And I want to just share with you, like, I guess like a fond memory for me playing NBA Jam was there was this arcade, and shout out to Genzo, because believe it or not, Genzo has been to this childhood arcade. It's called Sports World in Paramus, New Jersey, where I grew up. And Reyan, Sports World was this like micro amusement park, I'd call it, where there was not only a full arcade, there was laser tag, there were like these mini rides and simulators. There was this fake bowling alley. There was a pinball alley.
That's heaven. This sounds like a Fantasia
dude,
right here.
I lived it up at this place, and they just had NBA Jam section was always crowded. It was always packed. There were people waiting to play each other. It was like competitive at this arcade. When you showed up, you can't just like casually play NBA Jam at this place. You are seated in the competition that's involved around this arcade machine at the time, the culture around it. So it's really great it's really great to have like a full episode on this game, which it deserves one, right? Like this,
yeah. I love hearing that. That's so cool though. It's like that sense of competition. Like I think that's one of the reasons that people still really love NBA Jam. Like nostalgia like goes up only so far when it comes to like a game that becomes a classic like that. Like when people play NBA Jam nowadays, they still get really heated. Like my buddy who comes over and plays NBA Jam with me, he gets really into it. I mean, I get into it. So like there's something special about NBA Jam where it's like, yeah, I can absolutely see it being like a really competitive game, and people took it very seriously. And I'm sure there were some big money matches in the early 90s. I mean, Shaq used to play money matches for NBA Jam, which is awesome to me. Like NBA players were playing money matches for NBA Jam. That's how big it was.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This was a game that when the players saw it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I did some research, but this was revealed at the 1993 NBA All-Star game. And apparently the players all saw it, and Shaq was really, really, really excited about it, that he actually bought two machines from Midway, and then one machine they would travel with the team. So they put it on the plane, and then they would put it in the hotels, and they would be playing NBA Jam in their hotels. Have you ever heard of that story with Shaq? Is that
I
true?
have. And honestly, I love that story, but the downside is I always feel like a buzzkill. It's like it's not entirely true.
Give me the buzzkill.
I was so bummed out. So I when I got to interview Shaq, I had to ask him about this because I feel like this is just such an amazing visual of like, like there's a private plane, and then like, the team gets on, the coaches get on, the staff gets on, and then there's like an NBA Jam machine getting wheeled onto the back. Yeah, so he said he definitely did have one machine in his house, which you can actually find pictures of online. And Magic Johnson once interviewed him while playing NBA Jam, like around the early 90s, which is pretty cool. But I think Shaq said, oh, like that would have been too much to go in and like take the machine from town to town. But so I'm not sure if I think it was more like he might have been making a joke or something was lost in translation. But that said, though, it is true in the way that they did take Jam from town to town in terms of playing it on console. So
Okay.
what Wade did, and this to me is like almost as good of a visual for different reasons, which is that when Shaq was on the Magic in the early '90s, that classic squad of him, Penny, Scott Skiles, Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott, that classic Orlando Magic. They would get together after tour bus rides, and Shaq or somebody would say, NBA Jam tournament in my room, 10 o'clock, be there or be square. And then all the players would gather and they would play NBA Jam for money in a hotel room on the road. And there would be, there'd be a lot of money in the pot. I'm sure there was some drinking going on. I'm like, this was such a cool visual to me. Is like the classic squad doing it together. And this was in a time before playing video games was more socially accepted, I guess, like in that way. Like athletes doing a stream nowadays, or a picture of them playing games, that isn't that big of a deal. But in the early '90s, like that's definitely something different. And to have that dedication to have tournaments for and whatnot. So the Magic were a very hardcore NBA Jam fan. So yeah, so they did play NBA Jam on the road together. And I just love the visual of like Shaq and the crew being like, you know what? We're really famous people. We're literally the professionals that are featured in this game, but we're gonna spend our time after being on the road for all these hours playing NBA Jam in a hotel room together for money, because like that's what the game was. Like that's how much they loved it. So I mean, that was one of the other things that spoke to how good NBA Jam was. Like the players themselves, got into it. And Shaq told me like this was something that I thought was profound. Basically, it was like wish fulfillment for him. He said that he always wanted to be a 3-point shooter, so he would play as Chris Mullin or he'd play as Reggie Miller. He would never play as himself, never play as a dunker. He would always play somebody that could just nail that three, because that isn't something that he could do in real life himself. So while we were kids playing it to dunk and to imagine ourselves as Shaq was playing NBA Jam to imagine himself hitting like a killer three as Chris Mullin, which is just, I love that visual.
That's crazy. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you so much for all the background
Yeah,
on this. This is stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. And there's so many stories that go with that too. It's like, there's so many players that are like noted fans of it, like Mark Price, Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, who was some other ones? Glenn Rice was another one I interviewed for the book, who was on the Heat when NBA Jam came out, and he would actually wait in line in the Miami arcade. I love this. He would wait in line to play as himself, like because like there was such a long line for NBA Jam back in the day, and then at some point he just got tired that he bought himself his own machine. But I mean, like he was out there playing as Glenn Rice. Glenn Rice playing as Glenn Rice on NBA Jam out in the arcade in Miami. It's like, wow, I just love that, man. There's something special about that. So there's a lot more where that came from. There's a lot of stories like that.
Wow. Glenn Rice was a great 3-point shooter, by the way.
He
I
was.
remember he was one of those he wasn't great at everything, but he shot a mean three. And he was definitely an all-star, for sure.
He was the MVP of the '97 All-Star game. So when Jordan was there, and there's like one of Jordan's peak years before he retired the first time. Yeah, Glenn Rice was the man. I loved Glenn Rice as a kid, and he was a huge NBA Jam fan. To quote, he said, "I was an NBA Jam junkie." He even said emphasis on junkie like that. And he like would tell me stories about staying up until 3 a.m. playing NBA Jam with his kids, and like he would take it very seriously. And and unlike Shaq, he would always only play as himself. He's like only willing to play as Glenn Rice on NBA Jam. So I love it. Like everybody's got their own like different little story, different little angle on it.
That's really cool. I was gonna say, let me backtrack here on some comments. Biff Buffington says, hi Andy. Remember Saturday morning cartoons? You're my grown-up Saturday morning cartoon. Oh, thanks so much.
Oh, that's awesome.
Big head mode made me weak. Let's see. We also got a couple other comments here. JK40 said someone in the bubble last year had a pinball machine in their room. Think it was someone from the Blazers. They still bring the machines around, I guess. Biff Buffling says Rice was my player, Heat was my team, and then Lab says good old NBA Jam. That's right, Lab. We are talking NBA Jam with Reyan here, who wrote an awesome book, which you can go to Amazon right now. And I think Genzo, if you do !! Jam book. You have a link to Reyan's Twitter and the book itself, so check it out. Also, if you're watching on VOD, just check out. I think you just Google NBA Jam book, right, Reyan, and it pops up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm out there. Yeah, you can find me. I'm pretty easy to find. So at this point, I feel like since there have been no NBA Jam games for a little bit, I am actually like when you Google NBA Jam itself, like I'm the first thing that comes up, or like NBA Jam Twitter. Yeah. Not NBA. No, don't just Google NBA Jam. Then it's not going to be as cool. But if you look up NBA Jam Twitter, I even supersede the actual official NBA Jam Twitter because I haven't posted anything in years.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, just look up NBA Jam book, and I'm out there in a few different places.
All right. Well, I got a topic I'd like to talk to you about since we're talking about the players. Let's get into the Michael Jordan story and how he was in the game before the release and when it released, but then I think 2 weeks later, Midway's like, you got to take Michael Jordan and the Bulls out or something. Or I think it was just Michael Jordan. We don't have the rights to him because at the time, Michael Jordan did a split with the NBA and says, I own my rights to my own self. And the NBA agreed to that. They're like, yes, of course, Michael Jordan, you own yourself. We'll pay you. So do you have a little bit background on that story?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so Michael Jordan was actually he was part of the very first pitch to the NBA. So this is something that actually, if you can look up NBA Jam pitch video.
Yep,
so
I've seen that.
Yeah, and that, like, if you look at the players on there, they're just generic players because it's a little test for that first one.
This one?
It's a test for the NBA, but if you look at them, it's actually going to be, fast forward just a little bit, and it's going to be Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley in there.
Where is it?
So the team, of course, wanted to have Michael Jordan in there. So, this was something that they were really hoping to get. They're based out of Chicago too, and Bulls Mania was, in full effect in the early 90s. But then what happened, like you said, Michael Jordan had his licensing deal separate from the rest of the players. Even back then, he was just in a totally different stratosphere, of course. So he wasn't in the NBA Jam when it came out. But there was always rumors like, oh, I unlocked Jordan, or, he's there. You just got to do this. Like, oh, I saw a version of NBA Jam with Jordan in it. There's a guy I found in like an old Usenet forum who posted like, I was at the Mall of America today. This is like from 1993. There you go. You see it on the screen. You see Jordan on the top. There's a Jordan versus Barkley and Jordan versus Barkley.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so like this guy posted on this message board like, I was at the Mall of America today and I played as Michael Jordan, or I saw him on there, but he wasn't. But then NBA Jam ended up becoming so big that Michael Jordan or a member of his team actually reached out to Midway to say, hey, can we get a special version of the game with Jordan in it? And of course the team were psyched to do it, even though it wasn't an official one like they would have liked. It was still something. And of course, if it was Michael Jordan asking, he's gonna get what he wants. And what's crazy to go with that too is that Jordan requested his own machine. But then along with that, with Jordan asking for it, Ken Griffey Jr. did too. And Gary Payton before Gary Payton was in NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Like, everybody remembers Gary Payton from NBA Jam, but he was in NBA Jam Tournament Edition. So there's a special version out there which has like Michael Jordan, Gary Payton, and Ken Griffey Jr. in NBA Jam that was custom made for these guys in the early 90s. And Ken Griffey Jr. even sent in his own headshots and everything because he wanted to be in the game, which is so cool. I mean, again, this is like Ken Griffey Jr. in the early 90s he was the man.
He was like He was kind of like the Michael Jordan of baseball, sort of, at the time. He was like the man, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And just a huge presence, like pop culturally, he was everywhere. Okay, so this is another thing you can look up if you want to see the pictures. Ken Griffey Jr., just Google Ken Griffey Jr. NBA Jam photos. I think that would do it. And then try images. You should probably see one of the ones that I posted on Twitter before.
Look at that.
Yeah, this is the one that I shared on Twitter before. Yeah. So Ken Griffey had his pictures taken. And what's funny too is that he didn't just do this once. He did this twice, because the first time he had his pictures taken, they weren't in the right angles. So Midway was like, these aren't good enough. You got to do it again. And he did it again. So like the love for NBA Jam was real. And the fact that everybody was showing it was so cool. So yeah, Jordan was one of those people who was not officially involved in NBA Jam, but then, because it was so big and he loved it so much, he ended up being part of it too.
Such a great story. Yeah. So, and this is in a time where you couldn't just put a patch through, right? You had arcade cabinets that were already sent out and purchased. So there were cabinets that didn't have Jordan at the time when they put Jordan back in. There's cabinets that did have Jordan. There's cabinets that had Gary Payton. There was cabinets that had Ken Griffey Jr. Really interesting, where today they would just put a patch through, maybe, that would be the answer.
Yeah, they would have to burn ROMs if they wanted to do an update. So they would have to burn a ROM in Midway and then send it out. And of course, there should be a delay with the mail. And then who knows whether all the arcade operators know how to install the ROMs. I imagine most of them did. But yeah, totally different. I mean, that's one of those things back in the days. Like, when your game's out, your game's out. Like, that's it.
Yeah, dude. It's so crazy. This is such a fantastic game, and all these games, as I've been doing this podcast, I've been really digging deeper into like the backstories and history of games, and it's like all these '90s and '80s games have the most like interesting, fantastic stories, and there's like a love and nostalgia behind these, and NBA Jam is just like sitting on that shelf. If there was a Mount Rushmore more than just four people. Like if there was a Mount Rushmore of a ton of retro games, NBA Jam is on this mountain, right? I mean,
Absolutely, absolutely. When it comes to retro sports games, I'd say like it's up there with like what's up there. You got, of course, was it NHL '94 or '95? Which one was the really good one? I
both
think
of
it was
them were good, but '94 I
yeah.
think was the one that
'94
stood
is like a
out.
classic.
NBA Live '95 on Genesis was actually a pretty fantastic
Yeah.
basketball game.
There's a really big one I'm forgetting right now. Tecmo Bowl. Tecmo
Tecmo,
Bowl.
oh
Yeah.
well, Bo
Yeah.
Bo Bo Jackson was the most OG running back in the game, and
Yeah.
it was great. Yeah, there was so many great sport games, and this is sitting at the top where NBA Blitz, NFL Blitz, I guess you could say, is kind of like the closest you ever got to an NBA Jam for football. I think it in its own right. We could do a whole episode on NFL Blitz maybe, but it probably doesn't have the same beautiful like background and story as a game like this. Um, so I saw this like cool article, and there was a couple of fun facts, and I don't know if they're true, but there was one that said the Bulls were programmed to choke. Do you know anything about
That is
this?
true. Yeah, I do. I do. So, like I mentioned, Mark Trammell was from Michigan, and he ended up moving to Chicago to be part of the Midway team. But he was always a Pistons diehard fan. Like he loved the Pistons, and he grew up loving the Pistons. So what's really cool is that in the late '80s, that was the Pistons bad boys era. Like that's when the Pistons were on the top of the league, and I remember them like they definitely wrecked the Bulls one of those years, which had that the whole heated Jordan versus Isaiah Thomas rivalry going on over there too.
Right.
So Termel goes to work at Midway, and as the bad boys are beating the Bulls, he's like wearing Pistons merch around the office, and he's like chanting like bad boys, and all these Bulls fans, and they're all like jaw jacking each other over this, over the fact that the Pistons are beating the Bulls, and the Bulls fans are like they're not having this at all. Now, of course, fast forward a couple of years, things change, and now the Bulls are on top, and the Pistons are going all the way down. But Trammell is a diehard Pistons fan, and he would not stand for this. And he did what any fanboy would dream of. He was like, you know what? This is my game. I'm the lead designer of NBA Jam, and I want to do this. I love the Pistons. So he programmed the game so that if you played the Pistons versus the Bulls would choke in the fourth. So unlike real life, they would choke in the fourth. And since there was no Jordan in the game, the next best equivalent was Scottie Pippen. And Scottie Pippen's shooting percentage would go way down. So he actually programmed it into the game very carefully, very subtly, that if this scenario happens, then the Bulls are not going to do nearly as well as the Pistons. And people, for years there was like little rumors about that. If they played that, they're like, what happens to the Bulls? Like, why do they collapse at the end? It's because of that. And I mean, Termel put his money where his mouth is as a fan. And he ended up doing the same thing when he was on NFL Blitz. Like when he made NFL Blitz, he had the Detroit Lions be better than other teams. I'm not sure if there was a specific rivalry or it was it was the same kind of thing as the NBA Jam scenario. But that is true, and it's something that Termel is very proud of. Like Termel would sneak Easter eggs into his games like that, little quirks and tricks and things like that. But it is true, and Termel is very proud of it. He's not ashamed of it or anything like that. But I'm sure that some people were very upset when they found out all these years later that their suspicions were actually correct.
That's crazy. Wow, there's so many interesting fun facts. And do you have any that maybe we should talk about that I haven't referenced yet? Are there any other weird, like just like the Jordan story and then just like the Bulls story? Is there any other fun facts you think that we can reference that
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know
There's a
about?
ton of them. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. So let me just think of a couple off the top of my head. So one is the secret characters, of course. So the secret characters are just an iconic part of NBA Jam. Just crucial to it. I feel like without secret characters, NBA Jam would be very different. And the secret characters, they kind of came as just kind of as an accident. these like the Midway developers, they had themselves shot in front of a blue screen toward the end of the development process, and they were like, you know what, we're going to put ourselves in the game as like a little fun thing for us, and they didn't think anybody would care. But then Trammell cranked up his stats, of course, because that's what Trammell does. He made himself, like a 9 or a 10 in every category. So Trammell was one of the best players in NBA Jam, and he ended up. It ended up becoming a huge part of the appeal of NBA Jam, that all these secret characters are out there. So of course, one thing leads to another. It starts off with the Midway guys, and then the Claim starts bringing in their own people, or like coming up with their own ideas, like putting Will Smith in the game, putting Prince Charles in the game, putting Bill Clinton in the game, Hillary Clinton in the game, MVP in the game, Randall Cunningham in the game. It's pretty much like they would just pick whatever they wanted to put in the game. But some things I learned about that throughout writing the book were that those secret characters, they were not paid for their inclusion in the game. Now, granted, you wouldn't expect somebody to pay Clinton for it, but there's just so many classics over here. Like, you wouldn't expect somebody to pay Clinton for it, but like DJ Jazzy Jeff told me, like, he never like got a dime off of NBA Jam, or found out afterward when the game came out that he was an NBA Jam.
You can't get away with that. You can't get away with that in this day and age.
Definitely not. It was a Wild West back then. You know what I mean? It was a different era. And one of the other cool things that I learned about it too is that there were secret characters who were rumored to be in there, or who were potentially going to be included that didn't end up making the cut. Like, for example, in the early days, there was Godzilla and Bart Simpson were a couple of the characters that could have been an NBA Jam that they actually filmed against the blue screen, like little toys, like they turn them around. Let's see, on the home versions, there was Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. He was one they were considering, Acclaim was considering. And then Ted Nugent was another one that was being rumored for back then. This is like I think this was like an article that used the tweet. And you can click on it. There's like a little video of them like rotating the characters. So it's so cool. Like, yeah, could have had Bart Simpson or Godzilla in NBA Jam. Like, if you click on, I think it might be scroll down a little bit and then click on the link. Yeah, and that should take you on over to the video to see. Oh no, if you go back, I don't know. There's a way to get to it, so you can actually go back and see the Twitter link where I posted it, and that'll have the
There you go.
Godzilla there. There you go. So what they did was they took like little toys and they rotated them in front of the green screen to consider getting them added to the game. But what's funny is that like they never ended up doing anything with it, which was probably for the best, because from what I understand is that like Godzilla and Simpsons, the companies like Toho and Fox, they're very litigious. So it's probably for the best they didn't do it. But yeah, there was all kinds of different things back in the day that they came up with like all sorts of ideas. And the secret characters were like one of those things that can just go on forever. Like, there was rumors that Rush Limbaugh was in there, that Darth Vader was in there, that Al Pacino was in there, that Charles Manson was in there, that Ermac from Mortal Kombat was in there. Like, all these crazy things. Michael Jackson does a halftime show. Like, just, all kind of nonsense. But that's part of the appeal of NBA Jam, is that we get people so excited and think maybe Michael Jackson does give a halftime show in NBA Jam. Maybe that's really a thing, even though it wasn't. So there's all kinds of lore.
Whoa, there's the Bart Simpson. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. Dude, that is great. And just to go back to your book, because I don't want to forget, like, what kind of, if you can give me like a top line, like, what does someone get from the book, you think? What's the overall, what were you trying to, was it that you were writing a book to give more history and facts of it? Was there any goal to the book? Is there a meaning for you reading this? Like, I guess I don't know if you know what I'm getting at, but like, what do you want someone that finished reading this to close the book and say, oh, I X this, or like, I love this because.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so what really like I found appealing about the story was like the rise and fall and the passion that went into it. One of the things that ultimately like the book is about not just NBA Jam, but Midway itself, and all about the rise and fall of the company at its peak and in that arcade peak. The book also gets into how Midway went out of business in 2009 and the events that led into that. So Midway, their story alone was just compelling to me, even removing the NBA Jam element, because this is a company that they made Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, NFL Blitz. They had, of course, Smash TV. They had Terminator 2. They had Revolution X, WWF WrestleMania. They had all these different kinds of cool games, all kinds of stuff. And they ended up going out of business due to some mismanagement and the industry changing and some other things. So, ultimately it's like a rise and fall story of not just, the game itself, the franchise is, NBA Jam was huge on top of the world and nobody really talks about it nowadays unless you're talking about the old games. And then also Midway itself, and then also the arcade scene. So, ultimately, like, if you're really into like, how are things made, or how was this very specific thing made, or what were the circumstances that led into it, and you want the behind the scenes detail and like to go inside, that's where the book comes in.
Right.
And also like the story of Midway and like a company that was like on top of the world at one point. It felt like they're unbeatable because like NBA Jam made $1 billion in the year that it came out, $1 billion in the arcade. It's just staggering. Like, the point of reference I always like to use is Jurassic Park, which came out in '93, made $323 million that year, and Jurassic Park was everywhere. And Jurassic Park was, the Raptors basically, they're the Jurassic Park basketball team, and NBA Jam tripled that amount in the arcade, 1 quarter at a time, which is crazy. So like you don't have that much success and a game that nobody really talks about except in nostalgic tomes nowadays without something happening. So yeah, so it's all about the rise and fall of that. And ultimately I hope they take away like some really inspiring story of like these young developers who didn't really know what they were going to do, and they just use some improv, some of their creativity and all these other circumstances to make a game that really left a huge impact on so many people's lives.
Dude, I love it. This is one of the coolest episodes for me because this is a game that touches my heart as a retro collector. I don't know, Reyan, if you know, but I collect retro video games. You probably see my tweets. Everything is retro focused, and I give love and appreciation to this wonderful, culture and industry that we both love. And obviously, you love this game, and I find that really, really fascinating that you took a certain game that you really liked, and you really took the time to put this wonderful book together. And you are happy to announce that we're going to give away a book on the show today, right? A digital copy of the book.
Absolutely, yeah. And the winner is going to get it pretty much as soon as we get off the air and have an email address.
Yep. And I also want to say, CJ, thanks so much for the follow earlier. And I'm just going to read a couple of comments before we get into the giveaway. JK said, you can get away without paying George Clinton or Jazzy Jeff, but Godzilla would throw a fit. Imagine Mickey Mouse. Oh, God. That's funny.
It's true.
And then
it's true. It's one of those things. You mess with corporations. It's always different versus, putting DJ Jazzy Jeff in there.
Yeah, and then Biff Buffin says Marv Albert's skin needed a bit more of a freaky look. Oh, that's funny. Awesome. And basically, man, I want to thank you so much for shooting. I always say it's like shooting the shit, and that's exactly kind of what we did today with NBA Jam. And it's really been great to have you on, so I appreciate it. And I think today there's a game we always play on this show that a lot of us love, and it's called Stream Racer. And let's see if we could get a little round of this going to do the giveaway. So basically, it's an RNG game where people in chat can join the race, and the winner of this race, Reyan, will get the book. I mean, that is awesome. the best way to do it. So let's start the race. Everyone, let me tell you what to put in chat so we can join. And I gotta say, I drank like 2 huge coffees, so when I start the race, I'm gonna run to the restroom real fast. Let's see. Okay, everyone, exclamation point race in chat. Exclamation point race in chat. I don't know, Reyan, if you have a Twitch, you could join the race as well. Exclamation point race in chat to win the book. I know there's a lot of people here. I'd love everyone to participate. Please jump in on the race. It's exclamation point race, and the winner of the race will get a digital copy of the awesome NBA Jam book. So I know we got 4 people in there. Do you have a Twitch?
I do, but I don't have the logins on this computer.
That's
so
okay.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I always say the guest can come on, and then if the guest wins, you can pick the winner. But we are going to have a race here. We got 5 players already. That's enough. It only takes 2, Reyan. It only takes 2. So if anyone else, I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to run to the restroom, Reyan. So as we get this, hang out, talk to the chat if you'd like. I really have to pee, and I'm so sorry, but we're going to get this.
I will not judge. I will not judge. I've been there before. And hey, you know what? You're doing the right thing for your body. You take off. I'll be over here watching.
So we're going to start the timer, everyone. So Reyan, if you could tell everyone, and JK, it's exclamation race, not card in play. Exclamation point race, JK47. That's all you need to put. I'm going to start the timer. I'll be right back, Reyan, and we're going to get this giveaway.
I'll share some NBA Jam stories for the chat.
Awesome.
When you're not here. Yeah. All right. Let's see. All right. Without Andy over here, let me share with you guys that Tim Kisro, the voice of NBA Jam, almost didn't make it into the home versions, which was kind of a bummer that even potentially happened. But yeah, like he made a very small amount of money for working on the arcade games, made something like less than $2,000 overall, which is crazy considering how important he was. I mean, he was the guy that was, boom shakalaka, nail in the coffin, he's on fire. And then when the time came around to make the home games, Acclaim was saying that, we don't really necessarily need to have you in there. Like, we could potentially replace you. Because Tim was just asking for a little bit more money than like $1,500 or $2,000 that he got, which was kind of a bummer that happened in the first place. And Tim was like really tough about it. He was like, you know what, I want $3,000 to be in the home games of NBA Jam, which everybody knew was going to take off. And he ended up getting his money, but not without the worry that like maybe it wouldn't happen. So there was almost a time when Tim Kisro was not the voice of NBA Jam, and it might have been somebody else. Thankfully, that did not happen. There we go, Andy. Look, right back in time. I got a special story for the chat.
Awesome. So as you see here, we have the race going. We got No Fear in first. We got Biff Bufflington in second. Genzo in fourth. JK in fifth. But it looks like No Fear is taking a commanding lead here. Reyan, what do you think of that? Who do you?
Yeah.
Let's go all the way to the back. Oh, CJ, I'm sorry, you're stuck all the way in the back. We got CJ all the way in the back. Really just acting, and Biff is going off the course.
I have never seen one of these before. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's this game I discovered, and we always use it as a giveaway tool. So it looks like Biff is in first in a commanding lead, Reyan. I mean, we got No Fear in the back in second. We got Genzo in third. JK40 is all the way in the back with CJ tailing way behind. Biff hits the wall. JKS, no. Is this Roblox? No, it's not Roblox. It's an actual, its own game. Genzo is trying to sneak in front here. Things are getting crazy.
Amazing. I've never seen one of these before.
No Fear. He's in first though. He's in first. We'll zoom in. He looks happy. He's back in track. Back on track. So let's back up. We got Biff in second, but we got No Fear in a commanding lead with a beautiful jump. Yeah. Woo! Look at that. Nice job. Genzo is still in second with his cool car. He's so cool having a different car. So cool. Remember, everyone, you can do exclamation point boost in chat to help you out. But we got No Fear is still in a commanding lead. It looks like No Fear really wants your book, Reyan. He's really pushing.
Come on, No Fear, yeah. I mean, that's like a classic 90s thing. It's No Fear.
He might win. I mean, this is the end of the course. I mean, No Fear is stuck. He's stuck.
No.
He's gonna. He's stuck. Wait.
He's gonna levitate.
Wait. Congratulations, No Fear. You won. You won the book. Make sure to DM me on Discord your email so I can send it to Reyan to give you the book.
Yes.
But let's finish the race. We had Genzo in second. We got Biff coming around the corner, but doesn't. Wow.
Let's give one to second place too. Let's give one.
Whoa. We're gonna give.
Let's do it.
All right. That means.
Let's do it.
That means Genzo and No Fear get a digital copy of the NBA Jam book. So Genzo, I know where to find you. This is great. Thank you so much for also
Yeah, absolutely.
being so kind to give a couple of the books away, because I think it's really great.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. That was tremendously entertaining. So
Dude,
yeah,
it's the
no,
best way. It's a staple in my podcast, and it's an old friend of the show. And we don't always. I bring it out for special occasions, by the way.
I
So
love it.
it's
I
been
love it. I'm honored. I'm honored.
it's
And I
been
love, honestly, I mean, that to everybody in the chat, the fact that somebody with no fear, the username one, this speaks to the perfect 90s ness of all of this.
yeah, man.
Um, so yeah, no, shout out to you guys. This is great.
So yeah, no fear. I don't know if we're on Discord together, but please, if you can, join our Discord, or just DM me on Discord. Give me your email so I can get it over to Reyan. And then Genzo, I know where you are, so I'll get your email too. And then Reyan, I'll send those to you soon after today. And then if you don't mind hooking these wonderful fans
Yeah,
up.
absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, as soon as you, yeah, DM me those addresses and I'll get them out real quick.
All
Yeah.
right, cool. So just before we close out here, around where can we find you? What are and I'll put it in chat, but give us a little 1-2 on where to find you on the internet.
Dude, I'm loving this retro games compilation over here. Yeah, where you can find me, I'm at NBA Jambook on Twitter, at NBA Jambook on Instagram. Post less frequently over there, but I'm trying to work on that slowly. Otherwise, you can, if you're interested in checking out the NBA Jambook, it's on Kindle, it's in paperback. Actually, it's in its second print run right now, which is awesome. So you can find it out. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on bossfightbooks.com, which is the publisher's website. I think Target carries it too, and Walmart and some other places, but I've never seen a single person ever buy from there, nor leave a review. So who knows if they actually do? So I'd probably go to Amazon or over to Boss Fight Books for it. But yeah, otherwise just Google NBA Jam Book if you're into retro games and classic art, classic print ads, television commercials, things like that. I post on Twitter all the time. So yeah, thank you so much for having me over here. This was a blast.
No problem, man. Really fun. And thanks everyone in chat. JK Biff. And we're gonna raid someone, Reyan. That's definitely gonna happen here. Lost Pool Boy, thank you so much for the sub today. CJ, thanks for the follow today. Genzo, thanks for modding. And Max Headroom, thanks for stopping by from TikTok. And Biff Bufflington, I'm so glad that I can be your morning cartoon vibe, because people always say, "Hey Andy, why can't you make the show maybe a little later?" I'm like, I don't appease my friends, I appease my audience. So if you happen to be around at 8 a.m., you can watch the show live, but this show is totally viewable as a VOD, which after the show, I will put the VOD, and Reyan, I will share the link to the direct episode so people can watch at their leisure at any time. Also, check out on Tuesdays, we do a replay of the episode live here on Twitch. Reyan, you're awesome. What we're going to do is we're going to raid a really good buddy of mine who does a podcast right after me. He also was a guest on the show. His name is Greg, or CNP Panda, and I think he's doing a podcast right now. So everyone, please show love to Greg. We're gonna start the raid, and you can find me below. All my socials and things are there where I live on the internet. It's really, really great. It is early, no fear, but that is the best part. Thank you so much, Reyan, again, man, and it's great to meet you, my friend. Looking forward.
It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, long live NBA Jam. Hasn't been a game in a minute,
Yes.
but let's keep the memory going. Let's keep the spirit alive. There will be another NBA Jam someday. I feel it in my heart.
I love it, and that's the perfect way to end this. Thank you all. Let's give Greg some love in the raid. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let me